Hey Al, so gotten to another stopping point. You can see I've begun to infill just around the cockpit now that I've got it all basically laid out. So we've got the basic floor. I put the ribbing into it. The grip plate is what essentially that is. We have the two slip pads in front of where each of the rudder pedals would be. And note everything's already interior green. Also the two side walls are in. And I have I've cut the back wall and I've cut out the control panel, the instrument panel. So let's see, the panel is going to go in this way. So what I need to do here yet is make a backer, apply the instrument faces, clear acetate, and then this on top. And of course this will be painted black first. And then that whole assembly will go pin here into the cockpit. But that doesn't happen until after I've got all of the detail parts of the cockpit installed, including the throttle quadrant, the transmitter, circuit breaker boxes. There should be a tail wheel lock mechanism that goes to the floor here, flap actuator back here, and the oxygen and regulator over here, among other things. Those are the essential things. I've also cut out a rear wall for the cockpit. Now this is just a template, so I guess I should have said I've cut out the rear wall template, which is what that is. And this will be laid on over the birch ply, probably the 16th inch material, or actually 1/32 is what it is, and that'll be done in 2-ply. So that'll, out of 2-ply, it'll create the back plate and armor plating behind the pilot's head, and headrest, if you want to call it a headrest. Okay, so that's what we'll use for that. And to get this shape, I basically just this is bulkhead 6, which is this bulkhead here behind the pilot, and just traced around the inside. Bulkhead 6, just trace this out, and then once you trace that on here, you just rub that out onto the cardstock this way, and it leaves that line. And then what you do is you just cut around the outside of that line, well, by about maybe, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch wider. So you get that dome shape 1/4 of an inch greater than this line, and then cut off straight across the bottom. And then what I did was use the kit provided headstock, and we just laid that right on top of our cardstock cutout, and then created another piece of cardstock. And that time, and then on that one we traced around it, and then traced around this, and then back around the end of the template, and that gave us this shape. So if you look at it on here, you can see that it overlaps this curve by about 1/4 of an inch, right? And then it comes up and out through the top in the position of our headstock. And again, this is going to be canted forward here, and as it cants forward, that'll bring these corners down level with the edges of the cockpit combing. That's why we leave it long in this configuration. If you look at it straight, installed vertically like this, these would look long, but they're going to be canted forward right at this line here once I get it installed. So that's how that was done. Now I'm probably going to use this as a pattern to create the rudder pedal configuration I'm going to go ahead and install rudder pedals behind the panel. So we'll have that going for us as well. So that's why I'm using all of these parts just as templates, right? So that we don't throw anything away. Even the sidewall, you know, can give us some reference for the positions of some of the parts that I'm going to be making. Again, I'm not really using this for that, but I do want to make sure everything fits. So what I'll be doing is using the model kit cockpit sidewalls, and then I'll be using this to get the final shapes. In other words, if I'm going to install the radio, I don't want it to be any bigger than this. So this I know would fit in there, and then the rest of these, as far as the positioning of them go, just giving me a sense of where they should be, right? So that's why I'm keeping these for template as well, and I did use them as template to try and help determine the size of these sidewalls. So all that stuff is useful. Now here's the cockpit backer, the cockpit instrument panel backer rather. This is the back and armor plate for the rear bulkhead of the cockpit. We'll keep the sidewalls and the rest of these parts, the templates, just so that we can have a quick reference. Right. So anyway, I'm going to finish up the surrounds of the cockpit, get that infilled, and then we'll come back and we'll go down the sides along the keel. Do one side at a time, both above and below the keel. These two openings here, these just all the way down the side, and then we'll come over the top and go all the way down the center keel on the top, and then we'll get the bottom and get that centered up. And the reason I want to do it like that, again, that's the way I do it. The reason why I do it that way is to prevent warping or twisting of the fuselage. So we work slowly. We do alternate sides, just like when you do stringers, you alternate. So you would install this stringer, then this one, then this one, then that one. So you just keep alternating, and I do the same thing as I'm doing infill for the same reason. And then once we have center line, top and bottom and sides on either side of each keel, then I'll just start working around, and then I'll infill this cell, and then I'll infill this cell, and again working opposite to opposite sides, and we'll go down the line at that point. But initially we're going to go straight shot all the way down on both sides of each keel. Okay, and again, that's to prevent warping or twisting. So I'm stuck in there. Right, so anyway, I hope you can see what I'm talking about. And we didn't, you know, again, I didn't show much of this work, but it speaks for itself. I mean, cutting templates, want to leave a space, a small gap here for the instrument panel sandwich to be able to fit in there. It's going to have to go into one side and press over to the side so that it can be tilted up and raised into this gap, and then repositioned centered in there. So that's why this gap is a little bigger than this one. All right, so we're going to put the instrument panel in before we start furnishing all the components of the cockpit. So as far as order of assembly goes, we're going to do the infill completely. Then we're going to finish up the instrument panel, get it painted, and install it. And then I'm going to cut out and create a seat, make sure the pilot sits in there where I need him to sit, and then we'll get all of the furniture in here, all the components of the cockpit in. After the entire fuselage is sanded and shaped and prepped for paint, at that point I'll install the rear wall here with the headrest on it. I don't want to be sanding and trying to work around that headrest. So in other words, I want to try to get this torpedo smooth shape and be able to sand across this area here even after the cockpit is completely furnished and detailed, all but the rear wall. That's going to go in last after this is all prepped for paint, if you can follow that. So that's what we're going to do there. Right, so infill the entire fuselage. Once that's done, The cockpit is where I need it to be. I'll install the plastic components that go in around the fuselage, and then we can start looking at the wing. Alright, appreciate you. I did have a brief hiatus. I had a cold, and then I started to feel fevers and a lot of other issues related to COVID, so I went and got tested. It was a free CLIA test, CLIA COVID test, which is the clinical laboratory testing. It's the one that's at least more or less consistent and certified as a reliable test. Anyway, I had that done, and it was negative. It took 2 days to get the results. They stipulated 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 days when we went and got tested, and we were informed by email 2 days after I was tested. So, right. So if you feel sick, and it looks like COVID-related stuff, just get tested. There are free tests. You can go through your insurance company, but we didn't have to use insurance. It was county provided here in my town. So check to see if there are testing sites like that. It was quick. We were only there for about 20 minutes tops. That's all it takes, and it was free. And it was such a relief to know, to know that it was negative, and not be sitting there wondering, what I had, and should I be worried, and what happens if I start to struggle to breathe or get, lose energy and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm still fighting the cold. It's still passing through me. But I know that it's not the thing. It's just a regular cold, and that's another good thing to know, that there is, for your information, there is a regular cold going around too. And of course, we still have the flu season coming, but at least, FYI, I just wanted to put that out there and let everybody know. I'm fine. If you feel sick, get tested. Look it up online. Go and find where they're administering tests in your area. And don't hesitate. Don't sit there wondering and worrying. We did quarantine during that period of time, ever since I started to feel sick, and then once we got tested and we knew it was going to be 3 to 5 days, we just carried on as if it was COVID infection, and we shut everything down. We didn't go anywhere, and we wore our masks even when family came over. Get tested, be smart. All right, thanks everybody.